Hello, everyone. My name is Maverick LSC, and welcome to Robotech World, where it's a community podcast made by the fans for the fans. We cover novels, we cover books, we cover TV and movies. Excuse the cat; it decides to meow right now, but that's okay. Yeah, so it's a community-based fandom podcast. It's not monetized in any way. This is strictly for the fans, made by the fans for the fans. And tonight we have a guest here. His name is Preston Poutier. Is it correct?
Poulter.
Do I pronounce it? Poulter?
Poulter, yeah.
Poulter. Okay. Excuse me. So Preston, you have a podcast that covers a variety of different medias like comics and other things, like even I think TV shows as well. Correct?
Cobra Kai, yeah.
Cobra Kai, yeah. And
You know, I'm comic. YouTube was something I was kind of ignoring. I was just going out and doing comic book shows and gathering email addresses and trying to kind of market that way. But in the last year, people who have big YouTube followings or even fairly modest YouTube followings have been able to translate that to big comic book crowd funds. So I'm like, well, I guess I better wade into this world. So over the last 6 weeks, I've been, putting out content for a YouTube channel. It's related to, well, comics certainly, but whatever else is kind of interest. And Cobra Kai, people seem to be really passionate about Cobra Kai, so I'm gonna start talking more about that.
okay, well, I would like to explain to the fans who may be watching. Preston has been covering the Titan comic, Robotech comics, the reimagined recon version of Robotech, and Memo was actually the one who got me introduced to Preston's YouTube channel. And Preston, how did you start with Robotech? Like, what was your first introduction to Robotech, and what's your interest in covering the recent comics?
Well, all right. So two separate questions. Let's start with the first one. I had a cousin of mine. Well, I still have him, but at the time he was really passionate about Japanese animation, and this was at a time, and like this was pre-Robotech. So this was like, 83, 84, somewhere in there. And everybody else just looked at him like, man, this is weird. Why do you watch cartoons that are in a different language? So, but, when Robotech came out on TV, I remember I got really emotionally involved in the show. I thought it was, really compelling, and it's weird. It's kind of like a soap opera for teenage boys. You've got this war story with the Earth Defense Forces versus the Zentradi, but then meanwhile you're like, Minmay is just not right for Rick. He should be with Lisa. So there. And it's kind of weird, particularly for kind of a young teenage boy to get involved in the soap opera drama of the show. But then meanwhile, my older cousin was like, well, the Robotech show is nothing in comparison to the base Japanese anime, you see. And so he started showing me some of that. But honestly, I preferred Robotech because I liked the voice actors. I don't want to have to read all these subtitles. But I did watch, and it was a good show. That Macross Do You Remember Love movie? That was good. I liked it. Although I still probably prefer, the American series.
Of course, of course.
Oh, and then your second question was, how did I start reviewing Robotech comics?
Yes.
Okay. So then I'm trying to build my YouTube channel, and I went out and, all right, so I look on, Reddit for various fan bases that have comic books I can cover. And Robotech is one of them. And also I do reviews for a website, Comics for Sinners. And, every week, he gets from various comic book publishers, this list of indie comic books to review. And I get, free PDFs for him. And, I noticed Robotech was one of them. I'm like, all right. So I put out that video for Robotech because, most of the indie comic books I'm talking about, like, Tank Girl, I never really got involved in. So, I see that I could talk about it, but gosh, but Robotech, I'm like, issue 19, whatever. I'm just able to jump in because, I was such a fan of it as a kid.
Speaking of comics, you currently I believe you own Pocket Jacks Comics, correct?
Yes, that is my comic book imprint.
And I think one of your main titles is White Lily. So your mission statement, I believe, is creating and developing stories through comics with the eventuality of giving them film adaptations if if you can find someone to help produce it into a live action movie. So, can you
Right.
explain like how you founded Pocket Jack Comics and your interest into making comic books? And you also are a producer for a film that's currently on Amazon Prime. So, can you
Yes.
give us a little details on that?
Oh gosh, that's a long and painful story. But I got involved in my married life is not very good. I'm going through kind of my second divorce, and my second wife was dedicated to being an LA writer and producer. That was kind of her stated goal, and I was attempting to help her along those lines, but she was having a hard time kind of getting out there and really doing it, making the rubber meet the road, translating things from concept to actuality. And so I tried to kind of help her along that line. And writing was something I'd always had somewhat of an interest in. So I would start looking around and going, oh, hey, there's a writing group that meets near here, because at the time we lived in LA, and there's writing groups all over the place. So why don't we start going? And she would commit, okay, let's go. And then the time would come, and then she'd be like, I don't want to go. And so I'd be like, well, I'll go. Because I was trying to make her go. I was trying to put a fire under her butt. So I started going to these writer groups. I started reading stuff, and I was trying to share it with her. And then gradually, as I started to hang out with writers, I started writing things. And that was another thing I was hoping, this would. So, like a year, 18 months into it, I ended up with this screenplay for White Lily after discovering this story about, the deadliest female fighter pilot who ever lived. Because I didn't know that in World War II there were female fighter pilots. And I found it, and I found this character in the story. And historically, her story was it was cinematic. I saw the movie in my mind. And so, I wrote it, and I took it to writers groups, and I had it all tuned. And meanwhile, like my then wife. Anyway, so at that point, I was like, you know what? I'm so into this project. I've invested so much time in it. I want to start trying to get it made into something. So I started going to to pitch meetings and trying to get studios interested. And I started down that whole process. And ultimately I met with a guy, and this is actually I recorded this meeting. So that if you go like one of the very first episodes on my channel is me meeting with a guy named Jordan Barrel, who is also involved in movies and comic books and so on. And he gave me the idea of one thing you can do is you can take your screenplay and then you can make it into a comic book. And there's a group in LA, a networking group called The Table, and it's headed by a guy named Mark Zickery, who was able to fund and produce an independent pilot called Space Command. And it's pretty impressive. Mark Zickery is has some interesting, or no, I should not interesting. I want to use a stronger word than that. And I'm a writer. I should know stronger words than that. He has an amazing writing pedigree. He's written some episodes of the Star Trek Deep Space Nine and so on. If you go on IMDb and look up Mark Zickery, he's definitely got some credits, and he's got some clout and he's got some connections. So he was able to get the money together and produce Space Command, which he's now shopping around to Netflix and so on. And so I went out to some of those networking meetings, and like the format of those meetings is everybody stands up and they go, hey, I'm so and so, and here's what I want to do. So I stood up and I'm like, I'm writing this and I'm doing that. And when people heard of, oh, you're taking these story ideas and you're turning them into comic books, Mark Zickery was like, yep, that's the right way to do it. So I mean, this is kind of well established, like instead of just the typical Hollywood dream of you just crank out, 20 screenplays until an agent finally goes, well, this guy can write, and you try and get him produced. The idea of taking screenplay, translating it to comics, finding a following there, and then having Hollywood take an interest in this kind of backdoor route is pretty well established. So I'm walking the path of many before me.
Wow.
Such God, what's that huge zombie show? The Walking Dead. That was a comic book.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Quick question, Preston. Did you get
Mhm.
yourself a copy of one of these?
Let's see. No, I didn't. Where would I have gotten that?
That's a free comic book day.
Oh, okay. Well, you see, the problem with Free Comic Book Day is it coincided with Fan Expo Dallas, which is a convention I've been doing, and so that was where I decided to do my time. So I was not in a comic book store, but I will drop by on Monday, and hopefully they'll have some for me.
Okay. Well, are you pretty much up to date with the Titan comics up to, I believe, is issue 20 currently?
Yes. Yeah, I read through issue 20.
Okay. Well, I want to start the second segment of the show to discuss about the comics, and I want to
Okay.
keep it as an open forum. So maybe I'll start with Memo because Memo has been following the comics, and I believe he also has a copy of the Free Comic Book Day issue of Event Horizon. So for those that don't know, Free Comic Book Day was May 4th this year, and Titan released a free issue of Chapter Zero of Event Horizon. This guy right here, and it starts a new leg of Robotech. That's a different story to the previous 20. So it's going to start with a new story with Chapter Zero of this issue. And Memo, can you talk about the comics and some of the interesting spoilers now with the Free Comic Book
Well,
Day?
now we can talk about this comic. Of course, I had one already, but I just had to get my own. I still got to play the game, hunt my own, see if I can find it, even if it takes me a couple of comic stores here in Fort Collins, Colorado. That's where I'm at now. And of course, this one is already signed by Tommy. So, but um, interestingly, it's taking wild turns since it was written. And if you want to collect them all, pretty much this is a whole stack right here. So as you can see, it's pretty much all the issues. But
You don't have enough, Memo. You need more.
I don't have it. I mean, I got boxes. I got boxes of avid, not only an avid collector of the comics, the books, any material that has to do with written material. I have scripts, movie scripts, whatever you think of. I have it. Carl Masick was a good friend at the to meet him, so I got to see a lot of things thanks to him. And of course, hanging around with Harmony Gold doesn't mean you don't see much, but if you're able to keep a tight lid, the more you see. But it's neither here nor there. But the new story started off bad as equally the what do you call it, the art. The art I did not like till the fourth comic, till somebody actually told me, Memo, you got to give it a try. It looks like it's picking up. So I actually did, and I think just as then, Mark Furman, that's L.A.
How,
Los
how, did, how do
Angeles.
we get into the OJ case all of a sudden?
You caught it. If you're from LA, you catch Mark Furman. What do you call it? Simon Furman
Yeah.
from Transformers, jumping into Robotech, and I think he cleaned up the story a bit, brought in his own thing, and he's trying to connect all three, what do you call it, sagas together. Not completely the Masters, but in this one, and I think there's an image out there of Dana. So you got Dana. Not only that, you got new characters coming in with a series. That would be Max Sterling. Well, Max Sterling is the old one, but a couple of new guys for the Centrati, and a new girl for what's her name? Prisley or
Persephone or
Pricey?
Percy?
Prissy,
Yeah.
Prissy
Satori.
Satori, right?
Sorry.
Yeah.
And we're wondering if this Prissy Satori is any relation to Nova Satori.
Definitely not. No, that's a long
Might
shot.
as well throw it in. Yeah.
Not even a chance.
So, Mike, have you read the new comics or the what do you call it, the free comic book?
Yeah, I'm fully up to date. I've got them all.
Okay. So yeah, so you got these new characters in there. You got like you might as well already know. You got a bunch of Roy Folkers running around the SCF1.
Spoiler alert.
Laszlo, huh? Spoiler
Jesus,
alert.
spoiler alert. We'd have like an official spoiler alert now.
Okay, it's spoilers. This show is going to be complete spoilers. For those who haven't read the comics, you could stop watching now or just stick around and find out everything. So go ahead, Mama.
Yeah, you got to read comic book number 20. I guess Laszlo Zan has this comic book 20. Yeah, comic book 20. I guess Laszlo San, he's from the Sentinels. He has, I guess, a clone machine and all this going on. So it's a mess. It's a mess with what the guy wants to do, what his intention is. You gotta just keep waiting for it. Keep waiting for it. And the idea on this new comic, you get a more twist with the Regis finally getting into the action. So we're seeing everything being thrown together, and I'm just curious to see where Simon Furman takes this whole thing into the future, because it's throwing me off a little bit. I think it has to do with the disappearance of the fold drives from the first couple of episodes to where it's impacting everything, and the timeline is completely changed. So we're talking about the new Star Trek timeline type of thing. What happens if you start messing with it? And I think Rick Hunter, is it this one, right, guys? Is it this one where Rick Hunter is messing with the timeline, right? Or was it number 20?
It's all of them.
It's all of them.
Yeah.
Rick Hunter kind of throws everything into a loop, and
Well, you mentioned Laszlo Zand. As it stands in the comic at this point, he is on board the SDF-1, hidden inside a pocket dimension, controlling events outside of his pocket dimension and observing things and influencing stuff, time traveling, cloning. It's nuts.
It is nuts. It's crazy. That's what makes it interesting, because I like that kind of stuff. I love. I've seen it in Star Trek. I've seen it in what do you call it? Well, mostly more Star Trek than anything. With the timelines, messing with the timelines, trying to go back in time, bring what do you call it? Whales back to Earth, stuff like that, But it's happening in Robotech, and it puts a new twist into it, so it makes it more interesting. I mean, if you want the original story, there's comics books to collect. There's comic book collection already in volumes, where you could just follow the same story, or even the books. They've been republished, so you can find all that if you want to continue the story that we already know. But these comics are not meant for that. They're meant for a new change, a new plot twist, bring you back in, and it's on the heels of the Robotech live action that's coming out. So I kind of consider it as preparing for a change. Like, everybody's wondering what's going to be the change of the live action movie. I'm looking at the comics of, all right, back then already accepted the change or the reboot. So this kind of makes it feel like, okay, cool, this is going to be interesting to see how this is affecting me, is already going to affect when I sit down in front of the movie theater and start watching Robotech, a rebooted Robotech, as we know. And as Harmony Go had said before. So we'll see how that comes out, how that plays out.
I would like to talk about Lisa Hayes whenever I don't know if you guys had a specific
jump in.
Jump in.
Go ahead.
Anytime you want to add something to the conversation, just jump in, because we only got like roughly 2 hours, and we want to put as much stuff out there as possible, including spoilers. So Go ahead, Preston.
I mean, obviously, season 1, season 2, season 3 of Robotech all had dramatically different characters, but my favorite season was, the Macross season 1. And it was this love triangle, and I did it in my story. It's people love triangles, and so you had Rick, Minmay, and Lisa. And Lisa is kind of, I think, I want to say, the person that we're supposed to be cheering for when we are watching the show, or for that matter, reading the novels. Lisa is very noble. She's very practical, whereas Minmay is very impractical. But Minmay at the same time is a star. She's younger, she's more attractive, and Rick, is, kind of got his head, kind of looking very firmly at Minmay, and Lisa's, it's part of her character, and that she just kind of goes unnoticed in the background, unnoticed and unappreciated. But that has changed, I think, pretty dramatically in the comic book. She is now pretty stunning in the way she is drawn, and I understand that sells comic books, but she's definitely a bombshell. And when you go back and look at how she used to be animated, she used to look like this pen that I'm holding right here. That's how Lisa Hayes used to look. But now she's she's filled out quite nicely, and she's also not subordinate. She used to be subordinate to Global. Global would give the orders. And yes, Admiral. But now, Lisa Hayes is in charge. She's large and in charge in this kind of new version of events. And, I'm not saying that's bad. I'm not saying I don't want to see a woman doing that. But that is a very significant change to Lisa Hayes that I almost don't like. Like, I miss seeing kind of the meek, demure, unappreciated Lisa Hayes.
I think that goes to the heart. When Memo said that this comic is like the new Star Trek, it's even more correct than you think, because new Star Trek is a new timeline. Of course, things are different, but it's also a highly compressed timeline. They meet characters from the future, from the old show, in the very second movie, right? It's all compressed and squished together to hit those kind of fanboy notes. And that seems to be what they're doing with this comic. They can't wait, till season 2 and season 3 to introduce the Invid. We got to have them now in the Macross saga. We can't have people talking about the Masters and the Masters saga. We got to have them talking in the Macross saga. They brought Carl Reber back from the dead, from whatever jungle planet he's been hiding on. Now he's sitting in a med bay, unconscious. It's just it's so compressed. They kill off Global very early to get Lisa into the spotlight. And the thing that it's missing, the thing that the Star Trek movies were missing, is that time to actually develop the characters. I mean, Lisa is in the spotlight, but it doesn't feel earned because she's just suddenly there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
also, everybody's drawn like really thick, so.
Well, she was kind of thrown into the position. She was thrown into the position when Global died in their early issues.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. That's what I wanted to say. Is like once you took Global off, you didn't have to wait till the end of Macross to see what happens to Lisa. It actually happens like right now. She's already in charge. She's already going. But at the same time, you create that conflict with her friend, Claudia Grant, because Claudia is being manipulated by, like the spoiler I just released earlier about Roy Fokker. Does she trust Roy Fokker? Does she trust Roy Fokker? So it conflicts with the decisions going on. But Lisa early on knows what's going on. She knows what direction the SDF-1 is going. So it's kind of like she didn't just learning what do you call it, her job. I think she was already being prepared for that job, that role. I'm talking about when I think the first comic, or was it the second comic, when they had a little side story in there where Roy, was it Roy? Who else was it? Hayes, and they were walking in the SDF-1. Remember?
With the Halo troops.
Yeah, the Halo, what do you call it? Characters too. So when they were walking in there, they were actually seeing the future. And Admiral Hayes back then, was he an admiral back then? I'm trying to remember. He saw laying right there were humans, and he recognized one of the bodies. But I think all this thing was being prepared for Lisa eventually by knocking out Captain Global.
Sure, but I mean, and it also seems like she and Rick are. I mean, my exposure has been reading like 17, 18, 19, and now 20. It seems like she and Rick are kind of romantically involved, I'm going to say. Right? Or
they were in the show, but the comic hasn't spent almost any time with them together.
That's what surprised me, because they haven't spent no time together, and they pull a little stunt at the end. And then
it's compressed and it's unearned.
Like, how did this happen? How did we get to this point? And hopefully they explain a little bit, because I hate that. I hate where they just throw stuff in front of you, and there's this little incident that happens at the end of the comic, and I'm trying to remember, since I read 2 comics, my ending is all thrown off. So
I
don't know if it's this one, number what is it, 20, or this one, because you got information on both of them, so you got to have both of them. But it's that little incident with Lisa and Rick at the end is like, how the hell you get to this without, I don't know if you read them, by the way. So,
Well,
Oh, you said
I
you
think
had
the
some bad.
problem with the comics, this is what I'm finding, is that I think the problem with the comics is that it seems a little rushed in the beginning just to try to create a setting to accept these characters in their new roles that they're being portrayed compared to what it was originally in the series. And I'm
Right.
wondering if it's all done in that kind of manner, so that way it preps the audience or the fans into accepting that when the live action adaptation comes out, that these characters are most likely going to be there's going to be certain changes that the fans are going to have to accept in terms of new roles that they're going to play, or some characters will be there and some will not
Right.
because it's a reboot. So maybe the whole premise of the comics is to say, hey, there's a change coming, and we're going to give you an idea of what kind of changes that could be coming in the future for Robotech. Because remember,
Sure.
Robotech first and foremost is more of an anime and movies. And when it comes to canon, usually the TV series and future TV series tend to be more canon in terms of the history of Robotech than say the comics. But because it's a multiverse, the comics are its own canon. So I'm thinking because they did this drastic change with the comic books, we're expecting the same when it comes to the live action movie. Go ahead, Preston.
Oh, well, yeah. So I just pulled up issue 20, and yeah, at the end of issue 20, like Lisa Hayes is just putting this big old lip lock kiss on Rick Hunter, right in front of Minmay, and I don't like these changes. I feel if you go back and you one issue 20, I thought was just way too rushed. I mean, that was like 2 or 3 comics worth of material just rushed through it. Which we can get to that in a minute. But if we look at the original Macross story, it's basically a love story. It's about a guy who has this woman who he rescues and takes an interest in, and then she kind of gradually is building this career. Meanwhile, there's this other woman who's he's working with in terms of the military, and they kind of have this practical based relationship. And it's this gradual evolving love triangle and the conflict of feelings with the backdrop of a war. But I think the primary story of Macross is a love story, not a war story. Because the love story is what unites everything from the start of the show towards the end, where now, Chiron's battlecruiser is attacking, is that love story of Rick, Minmay, and Lisa. And as far as I can tell, that whole interaction of those 3 characters seems to have been drastically altered. And so I'm like, well, is this really the Macross story anymore? Are these the characters I'm used to watching? So I don't know.
Well, if you look in terms of like the way the comics have been rebooted, would you say that the direction for the franchise is to do something similar to Ron Moore's Battlestar Galactica, where they're just going to turn everything upside down and have a different perspective on the franchise in terms of the plots? Because it's for me, it's hard because like I look at what movies you see in Hollywood, for example, and you see the direction they're taking. There's a huge push now for female empowerment, which I'm okay with. There's nothing wrong with it, but it doesn't seem to be like equal to everyone anymore. It seems to be specific to one group. And I remember growing up with Star Trek. Star Trek wasn't really about any single individual person or color or race or religion, because Star Trek really was about people dealing with external threats, and it didn't matter who was in the captain's role or the commander's role, because we had Captain Sisko, Commander or Captain Sisko from DS9. We had Captain Janeway with Voyager. So all these roles, were being, like shown properly. Well, not properly, but maybe shown equally in those movies. And even Sulu had a little bit of you could say his time to be a hero in what was it, Star Trek, the Undiscovered Country, where he was commanding was it Excelsior with the Enterprise when they were taking out the Klingons to be or not to be.
I remember like listening to William Shatner on Howard Stern talking about George Takei, and George Takei's like burning desire to have Sulu, become like eventually like be a higher rank than Captain Kirk, and William
Anyway,
Shatner being like, Sulu, that would mean you weren't on the show anymore.
anyway, going back to what I was saying, I think there's too much focus on Hollywood trying to play social politics, and
Yeah.
I don't think politics really needs to be in so much into movies now. Like, I think people what need is like they need good stories, and they need good
Absolutely.
characters to explain these stories, and it doesn't matter what roles that they play. They all could play equally, and I think they can
Mhm.
all be treated equally. I think that's why when I look at Robotech, I think it needs to be an ensemble cast where everyone's equal. Like you look at how Marvel did the MCU with Marvel Endgame. Even Nebula was like a key character in
Mhm.
Endgame, and there's a and that's what I want to see in Robotech. It's like there's it's a good story, it has to be a good story. Everyone has their role to play, and you don't have to play these politics. But the good thing about the way I see the comics is they don't really push the social justice kind of aspect to it, because I'm happy with Lisa being a captain. I really am. I have no issues with it, and I think it's a good change for the series, because right now the way the comics are being portrayed, I love the comics. I love the direction they're taking. I
Mhm.
just have a few key issues in regards to some conflicts
Pacing.
with canon, but I think they're using the time travel aspect is a little bit of a crutch to fall back on, because it's an alternate timeline, so maybe something in the future will affect it. I don't know. Anyway, go ahead, Memo.
People are let me get to the chat because there's a lot of stuff going on in there. I already lost track, but they're asking if they're gonna ever put this if this comic, because a lot of people are collecting the comic around the world, so through Comixology, but they don't have the what do you call it, the free issue. This one they don't have it online yet, so a lot of people are trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Hopefully somebody well, I can't say, hopefully somebody loads it up soon, but it's free, so it'll probably get out there. But no, they don't have it. How do you say it? Out in Comixology yet, or Comixology yet? But hopefully they do, and soon.
Well, maybe the best thing for people to do is contact your local comic book retailer and ask if they have any leftover stock of Free Comic Book Day
I'm
comics.
talking about outside of United States. Outside United States, there are people from Argentina, people from Mexico, China. They're all trying to figure out why is it online, and hopefully they do it sooner than later, because people could go online and get it through Comixology. So,
Well, you
but
could
right now,
always
the only people that have it is in the United States.
well, you could always get a couple of them and send to a couple of friends. I'm sure something like
Sure.
that will happen.
I, like I said, I got one already a long time ago, but I still went and hunted for that free comic book day comic, and I had to go through three comic book stores to get the last one, and it was just sitting there, and I'm like, damn, it's already late, and I'm glad that I happened to grab it.
Okay,
It
well, I want
helps.
to I want to go to the next stage in terms of the podcast and the next segment, and basically, I want to ask everyone, what are your thoughts in regards to the changes that they've implemented, not with just the issue 1 to 20 of the original Recon rebooted Robotech comic, but also the changes that are upcoming in the Event Horizon issue, because there seems to be some significant issues that people are having, and I want everyone to bring it out, and don't be afraid to talk spoilers and whatever that you like or dislike with the comics, because right now my feeling is, and in regards to both the storyline and the direction it's taken, because we're going to go into plot speculation right now, and do you believe that this the direction of the story is going to cross with the original series? Because right now they're starting to pull characters from the different sagas of Robotech, including
What do you mean cross? What do you mean?
well, there's characters from different sagas like Southern Cross from Mospita, which is New Generation, and Robotech is
Oh,
New
you mean
Generation.
is like Dana Sterling going to meet
Yeah, Dana
Rick Hunter?
Sterling. There's Colonel Wolf. He's in it. He's in the actually in the Event Horizon, the new issue that came out on Free Comic Book Day. He's on the first page.
He's not dead
He is
in
not dead.
Horizon,
Yeah, and there's also
which introduces End of the Circle, which like.
I hope.
okay,
I
and
hope
I'm gonna
people.
start with
I
a
hope people
big,
comment.
big, big spoiler.
That was a
Min May,
spoiler.
Min May, Min May. Okay, I'm gonna say this. Min May is now a virtual idol. Okay, let's start. Let's go with the spoilers. Let's have some fun. Come on. Let's
The
go.
Event Horizon, that Event Horizon comic, you had Jonathan Wolf, so that means what do you call it? And he's wearing his somebody said right here too, and I caught it and I saw the difference, but it didn't click to talk about it. But they said he's wearing his Southern Cross uniform.
That's correct. That's correct. He
He's
is indeed wearing his Southern
Cross.
Cross uniform, including the color scheme is similar to that of the 15th Squad.
Do you have an image of that map? I don't know.
Yeah, just hold on a second. I'll put it up. Okay. Let's speak right here so people can see. Okay, there's Wolf right here. Let's see if I can zoom in. He's right in that corner right here. Oh, okay, that looks okay. So that's Colonel Wolf right there. We aren't Colonel Wolf. We aren't Colonel Wolf. The ship is much. That is that much I do. So do know. Sorry, I'm trying to read it from the screen. But yeah, so that's Colonel Wolf. Go ahead, Memo.
Yeah, you see Colonel Wolf. What do you call it? The Region is there. The Regis is there. They leave it off with a bang. So it's still trying to figure stuff out with that one. Rick Hunter doesn't look as old as Shadow Chronicles. Do I have Shadow Chronicles around here? You know what I'm talking about, right? I have only what's this? Oh, Shadow Rising. So, dang it, I don't have Shadow Chronicles. But you know what I'm saying? The white hair and all that. He doesn't look.
He hasn't gone gray from 30 years of interstellar warfare. He just has a scar.
Even when what do you call it? He was messing up with a timeline. In chapter, what was it, 20, I think, or was it the Event Horizon one? Well, anyways, one of these two, what do you call it? Rick Hunter comes out, and he's not as great as portrayed in Shadow Chronicles. But they're putting a lot of stuff in there from Shadow Chronicles, especially with what's going on. Like Matt said, they're pulling a little bit from everywhere. So I'm trying to figure out, all right, where are we going with this? How is this going to be straightened out with the canon? The canon is already out the window. It's just it's just pulling from left and right now.
Oh yeah, they brought in the organics in Event Horizon. I don't know if anyone noticed. The organics are in there from the Sentinels.
The Sentinels, organics from the Sentinels.
Yeah.
And I saw that. I'm like, where's my book, my RPG book?
Yeah. So there's a lot of changes, and I think
Somebody trying to say something.
I was going to say the single worst infraction in this episode 0. If you turn to the page with the Regis on it, can you pull that up?
Okay. I know which one you're talking about here. You want me to put it on screen?
Yeah, pull that up.
Okay, hold on. Here you go, Trez.
No, the bigger one. The one
bigger
before
one.
that.
Oh, I know which one you're talking about. Hold on.
Next page.
Hold on. I lost my position. Next page.
It was the next page.
This one here?
Yeah, look at that.
This one here?
Right there. That's the Regis. And no boobs.
Oh.
Just
so much for female empowerment.
Terrible. Terrible.
Or, here's another big spoiler. Is Jan Morris is back.
Yep.
Yeah, she's taking over Minway's job now, as being an idol for Robotech, because Minmay's been basically a virtual idol. So there's going to be some interesting storylines coming in this issue. But
So
is there any
virtual idol versus a virtual idol?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Do we want to talk about the magic powers?
Yeah, let Memo talk about that. Or Trez, you want to talk about the magic powers, or even Lancer? Master,
I don't
you
know
have
if I
anything to
have the
say?
strength.
I don't even know what magic powers we are discussing.
In an
Oh.
attempt to, I guess, explain something that didn't need explaining, they decided that they would give Rick and Min-Mei
Right.
heightened abilities based
Oh
on
yeah.
their time spent exposed to the bowels of the ship.
Basically,
Yeah.
and I called it early because that's the first thing that I hated that happened when that came about, and one of the first issues was Rick Hunter went Matrix on us. He went
Mhm.
what do you call it? Neo.
Neo
Right.
Vision.
You know,
Yeah.
Neo Vision. And I'm like, oh come on, this is from Matrix. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't need to steal story from another story, but eventually, what do you call it? It's where it's at right now. It's like they're using him and his vision power, kind of like what I'm trying to remember Samuel Jackson's not Samuel Jackson, the other one.
Lawrence Fishburne?
Morpheus. Lawrence Fishburne's Morpheus
Yeah,
character.
Morpheus. Morpheus character is trying to use Neo's. What do you see? What do you know what I mean? And
Right.
they're using them for that same purpose too. But I think a little bit more is said here than in the past. But yeah, when they went Matrix on that one, that like, all right, cool, let's see where it goes. But
Now,
I'm just
does it
waiting for him
scare
to be
you?
able to move.
Okay, now
Being,
let's move over from okay. We discussed the comics now. Now we know what direction the comics are going. Let's talk about the live action movie. Do you feel what's going on with the comics is a message to the fans saying expect something similar for the live action movie?
God, I
Well,
hope not.
Okay,
Is-
Lancer, I know you have this thing with the
Lancer,
cast. I really want your opinion on this because I know you're big with this live action movie stuff. I want to hear your say in this.
I've been listening to you guys now for the last half an hour. Preston, it's very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
My goodness. All I'm waiting for right now is for one of you guys to say Zor talking to Rick and saying, "No, I am your father." And I will just get up from this computer and I will chuck it out the window. So,
Oh, that's page 77, but it wasn't Zor. It wasn't Zor. Actually, it was Leonard.
As okay, all right. So as oh my goodness. All right. So all right. To address a couple of the points you guys were making, Maverick, you were saying about how Battlestar Galactica and BSG, how they were similar, and at the same time how BSG took it on its own tangent. Similar
Correct.
to how the comics are going on their own tangent. I can only give probably the greatest example that we have had in modern history, and that's the MCU. All of us know that Marvel has been around for 80 plus years, and that it is a great franchise, and it has birthed many a superhero. But we also know that in comic book land and in comic book lore, there are certain rules in comic book lore, which is there aren't any rules. They can pretty much do whatever the foobar they want to, and they do not have to care about logic or space-time continuum or anything else that's even remotely, what's the word? Rational. And when the MCU came about with Iron Man, they knew, and I honestly believe this, they knew that they had to have some basis in reality. They had to have some basis in science in order to make it plausible for the science fiction that they would introduce into the world. And the science fiction being the comic book take of everything. If we take that analogy and bring it to Robotech, the original 85, and this is from my talkings with Billy, who, if those of you who do not know, Billy is the vice president of Harmony Gold. From my conversations with him, the original 85 are canon. The comics, the books, and anything else of that matter, he gave me this look as if they're there and they exist in their own universe, but they're not he would never go so far as to say it is quote unquote canon. Let's call them legends, as we do in Star Wars. They have great ideas. Some of them I cringed over from listening for you guys. And in order for this live action movie to work, which I believe all of us do want to happen, it needs to have some basis in reality, some basis in science. So yes, the science fiction that they will throw on us, which is the aliens, 60-foot tall aliens, protoculture being a fuel source that does all kinds of crazy, fantastic things, and of course, the ever impressive transforming robots. In order for those things to be palatable for a universal audience, as Iron Man was palatable to a non-comic book audience, as Preston so eloquently said, the story needs to be intact, and which is why I believe that Macross will be a trilogy if they go with the Macross saga. The first movie being the introduction of the SDF-1, the introduction of the mecha, the introduction to the characters, and then at the end, the introduction of the enemy, the Zentradi. The second movie is where you get what Preston so eloquently put as is our love triangle, where where Rick and Min-Mei eventually have their little tryst, and then Rick having his feelings tugged by Lisa, and then of course all the battles that ensued, and kind of a Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers type of moment where you have a great battle in the middle somewhere near the end, and the SCF-1 lands on Earth, cut to end, boom. The third movie would be a recap, sort of like a Global's report type of thing, but maybe not like full on, but at least a hearkening to the last two movies, kind of like what Endgame did. And then, of course, you have your build-up to what we all want, which is Force of Arms. We want to see that great big battle in the sky. We want to see Max and Miria's battle. We want to see the death of Roy. We want to see Chiron's revenge at the end. And we want to see all of that. We want to see that story that got us all hooked as teenagers, those of us who are G1 fans. You know, we want to see all of that build, and they have to earn it. But they can't kill us and inundate us with too much comic book, with time travel and any other craziness that the comic book is doing right now. And with due respect with the comic book, which is great and fine and dandy, they need to keep to the original 85. And they need to keep to the essence of the original 85 in order to get an outside audience to enjoy this, hopefully, trilogy if they do the first movie right, as the MCU did with Iron Man.
Okay, Lancer, I got a quick question. In
Yes,
regards to
sir.
role reversals, in Battlestar Galactica, they changed Starbuck and a few other characters that were gender changes. So basically, Starbuck became a female, so did Boomer.
Boomer, yeah.
And because of the nature of Hollywood, and you have to adapt things because right now society is changing, and we have to accept like the changes that society is showing. So you got to have like a little bit of equality and showing like a more diverse cast in terms of the movies. Would you make those changes in the live action movie, or would you keep it specific to canon that you see in the original 85? Because I'm okay with the changes if they do a good story like the original like the Ron Moore's 85. Do you think it would work with Robotech? And anyone can intervene and answer that question, because like I like the changes that they're doing in the comic, but I don't like the drastic ones. Like I think too many changes to Robotech in terms of the storyline may have an impact in terms of like the fluidity of the film. So I want someone to answer this question. Do you think a drastic change in Robotech, the reboot, will be enough to sell the audience the story?
I mean, the problem, I'm coming at this from a writing story point of view, is you have to ask, what is the conflict and the emotional appeal to an audience to get involved in that conflict? And the more it seems like this is an effort to kind of blend together a bunch of different storylines to end up with kind of this different cast doing these kind of different things, that is not an admirable or worthwhile goal. The goal is to tell a good story, and the question needs to be, well, what is it? And so, I mean, I haven't read the Event Horizon comic, because again, I've been doing Dallas Fan Days all weekend. But it's not about, like, look, Starbuck was a great character played by Dirk Benedict. Starbuck was a great character played by Katie Sackhoff. And, Starbuck, despite, the gender bend there, was still fairly, true to the character. She still gambled. She was still reckless. She still had some intimacy issues, and she still smoked cigars. So, hooray. But my question is, in Robotech, like, what is, or in this live action film, what is the conflict that is going to emotionally involve the audience?
Here's my take. If you change characters' genders just because you want to make some sort of political or ideological statement, don't do it.
Well, I think it's more of the female audience is one of the largest audiences in the movie economics. That's what I believe, right? There's a lot of female moviegoers, and they are going to be a significant factor in terms of the higher grosses that you're looking for to seek in a movie. So I understand that aspect of it. My question is whether or not, knowing how the story is, can you properly create a story with items like, for example, diversity, also with timelines? Because the one thing I don't like is I hate time travel based movies, because it's very difficult to create a story that you need something like a 22 movies to create up to build up this setting to make the final movie a time travel movie and understand
and then still abjectly fail.
Yeah.
Yes. It does technically.
Here's my thing. Look,
they have an entire scene where they count off all the time travel movies and why they don't work, and then they make the same damn mistake.
Yeah.
They literally shot themselves in the face with the 22 movie long canon.
Marvel.
I remember seeing that. I was like, what the hell? We're back in Star Trek.
Okay, but you're going back to the story at hand, though. However, honestly, can we honestly say that Robotech needs changing in that diversity /
It does. It does.
No.
I agree with that.
No, I disagree. I don't think it does.
Robotech was already an extraordinarily diverse cast, both at the time and even today.
Thank you.
I don't have
Lin-Man May, Arizona,
Claudia Grant,
Robotech, Miria. I mean, you've got so many strong female characters in there.
Yes, you do. Thank you, Preston. Thank you, Therese. You do not need to do something crazy oddball. You have a first officer who is a female.
The question is, do Hollywood execs understand that women enjoyed Rocky the movie just as much as the men did? Like, that wasn't just only dudes in that theater watching two guys beat the living crap out of each other. The women can handle the fact that the story doesn't have to be about their gender, and they can still get emotionally involved with it.
Plus, you have Miria, who's a kick-ass pilot who beats the crap out of a lot of people in fighters.
Well, it's kind of funny, though, because Preston has a comic called White Lily, and the ace fighter pilot there is a female. And when I was reading that, I was looking at the synopsis for that comic, I'm thinking, this Russian fighter pilot's like Miria, exactly like Miria. I saw the correlation between that. I thought it was really cool.
Oh, yeah, I mean, and it's a great historical story, and I'm going to go see that movie if it ever gets made, and I'm going to enjoy it. I went and saw Red Tails about the squadron of African American fighter pilots.
We don't talk about Red Tails, Trez.
I'm sorry?
We don't talk about Red Tails.
I understand that, but it's a thing. It's out there. I still went and saw it, and I enjoyed it, and I am not of that ethnic persuasion. It's
if you're
possible.
gonna watch a good movie about the Tuskegee Airmen, then go see the Tuskegee Airmen that HBO put on 25 years ago. That's the movie that you would want to watch.
Yeah, I mean the point is the same. I mean, you don't.
Yes, I get your point.
It's a question is whether or not Hollywood can understand this concept that people can empathize with the others.
Well, if you do the story as Preston and myself and a lot of us have been talking about over the weeks, if you make the story correct and make the characters the way that they were, I mean, yes, you can update them to modern time, but does Lisa's core character need to be changed? Does Miriam's core character need to be changed? Does Claudia's core character need to be changed? Though these are the questions that you have to ask yourself, and will audiences attach to and relate to? They don't need to change, and you just need to stay true to who their core essence is, and you'll be fine. And
I think Avery Books has the best word on this. You know, Captain Sisko himself, when someone asked him what was it like to be the first black Star Trek captain, and he says, "I don't know how to play a color." You know, how do you get up in the morning and act brown?
Right.
Amen.
It's a great video on YouTube. Everybody should go watch it because he just like absolutely destroys this nonsense SJW idea.
Well, here's my opinion on that diversity, because I was watching Voltron and I was really digging it. The new Pidgey, what's her name, change of was supposed to be her younger sister now. When I got to that point, all right, I see where he's going. In other words, the story built to it, but I had to leave from watching Voltron for a while, and then I hear the news that you had these two guys at the end, what do you call it? Putting in the was it the gay scene or something like that? And
yeah,
the same-sex marriage.
The former black
the same-sex marriage scene at the end of the series.
Yeah. I was like, why? Why they needed to add that? And it just killed watching the whole series for me now.
Well, it's even worse than that, because they made Pidge a girl, which is fine, but they never let Pidge act like a girl. Pidge never wears female or feminine clothing. She never does any kind of girly thing. It's like the messaging is, in order to be acceptable, you have to behave like the boys and dress like the boys and do boy things. And I'm just like, who's running this movement? Y'all are bad. Stop it.
And to answer Mav's original question, the only two characters, there was only two that I would gender bend and change if they had to do it, would be Captain Global and Max Sterling. Those are the only two characters that I would allow to even remotely be female, because one, it doesn't hurt the story, and two, quite honestly, if you made Maxine and Miria a thing,
it's hot.
I just threw it from my mouth a little bit. I didn't go wash.
I'm just wondering.
I can show you some artwork from one of the 84, which might be somewhat in line with.
You got to crash DeviantArt servers. What's wrong with you?
The thing is, like, what kind of Robotech movie do you want to make? Do you want to make a movie that's made for the time that it's made in, or do you want to make a timeless movie that lasts the ages?
I want a good movie.
You know what? I want what Andy Muschietti, and we're talking about Andy Muschietti here when we're talking about live action, is doing for it to do for Robotech. Sticking to the book, kind of sticking to the stories, sticking to
the source
material. Already know.
To the source material or to the story?
Do you think he's going to have the scene where all the kids get together and have sex? Is that going to be in the second movie?
I mean, to me, Robotech is and the problem is, when we're talking about Robotech, is you got to decide what season, because the seasons are have radically different themes. But season 1 is about kind of the evolution of individual loyalties in the breakdown of society, and kind of as those loyalties shift, Because Zentradi society has also broken down. So you see this kind of breakdown of society, both for the Micronians as well as for the Zentradi. And at one point, they're just on the ruins of Earth, just kind of like, well, I guess we're all getting along together and trading now. And you have, Chiron kind of making this call back to glory, but really it's for his own personal glory. He's not really doing it for the Zentradi. This is something Chiron is doing for Chiron. And that is kind of interesting to question what motivates people in the breakdown of society. And I think there aren't necessarily a ton of shows that do that. I mean, you could, the zombie shows do that a fair amount. Like The Walking Dead is about, okay, the personal motivations as society devolves, and The Walking Dead is a huge show. Robotech did it before the zombie thing was cool. And so I think that's kind of the essence of season 1. That needs to be what the movie is about, in my opinion, is kind of the gradual breakdown of society on both sides. And there is a fear. There's a very real political fear right now about losing our culture. And Americans are worried about losing our culture, as do, like the Brits with Brexit. They're like, Morrissey of all people was talking about look, I go to Knightsbridge. It's this quaint British town. I hear all kinds of different accents, but never a British accent. It's because we've allowed in too many people who are not really British. And so you have these people who are like, we're losing our culture. Well, this is a great story in which to look at that, because you've got the Zentradi and the Micronians all kind of thrown together, and both are having their cultures just radically disrupted. And at the end, they're kind of on this world that's been blown to smithereens, and they're trying to rebuild some type of society. And you still have people like Chiron who are still kind of calling to this old sense of glory. So I think that's what the conflict needs to be. And then the question is, what characters do you want to populate in that conflict?
Well, even more interestingly, so the Zentradi didn't really have a culture to begin with, so you have that
they
aspect
had a culture.
as well.
They had a culture.
They did have a culture, yeah.
It's very similar to I would say like
Aztecs or Klingons.
Yeah, they didn't have singing. They didn't have any form of self-expression. They're all military automatons in the show.
But that is a culture.
That's the furthest thing from any useful definition of the word culture I've ever heard. Okay. It is a thing. It is a way of life. Right. But there's no esprit de corps in the Zentradi Navy. You have your task, and maybe your ship gets blown up. Like they don't even know how to fix their own ships. They're so low self-worth, right? They're so not invested in their lives. Well, I mean, that's an interesting thing that Robotech didn't really delve into in the show. That might be nice to go for in the movie, is kind of like, how does that work?
However, you don't want to go too deep, though. I mean, I understand.
And it kind of highlights how they take to the human culture. Like, if they have a bunch of fanboys like Rico, Kondo, and Braun, but like turn them up to 11, that would be kind of fun.
Well, here's the thing. I'm thinking that the Zentradi culture is kind of like a technocratic society where technology basically does all the menial labor, and the only reason why they war is because that's their idea of entertainment. That's their culture. Like machines does everything for them. I think the machines actually fix their ships, like nanotech or whatever.
No, they don't. Their ships are crap. Remember,
or it's just built in the Robotech factory.
It's like how it is in as depicted in the show. They don't really do much of anything. In the comics, they've kind of introduced that the Zentradi have this, warrior ethos. There's a scene in one of the comics where Miria is like in a gladiatorial arena, kicking butt and taking names, and I'm eyes rolling out of my head. But
would you say that the goal of the live action movie is to find a way to, like for the live action movie, like the major theme is the theme that you can have differing cultures, and somehow this conflict will allow not just these people that are involved in this story in rediscovering culture, but also kind of brings an awareness to the audience that we're kind of have this built-in wall around us, that there's culture all around us, and it's something that we should probably appreciate a little bit more.
I think the most compelling struggle in Robotech and what unites the three sagas together is the human struggle. You know, you have these people who are thrown into this crazy situation and they have to survive. And the whole show, if I had my druthers, it would be the fight for survival. You know, I would play up the fact that they're on this ship that they don't understand, that does weird things that they don't expect, and that, you know, people die very suddenly. If you look at, you know, that was when I first saw Robotech, and the Zentradi and the Vertex came screaming at each other, and stuff just started blowing up, and I didn't see no parachutes. And I was like, wow, like those guys just gone in a snap. You know, that to me kind of is the overarching thing of Robotech, is just how tenuous their grasp on survival is throughout the whole show. And then the Earth gets blown away, and they're there, and they're still fighting for survival even after they've won, right?
True.
They got to rebuild the planet.
See, but I always thought that when Hollywood makes movies, sometimes it's just like, you know, they make a movie so that way they place a mirror in front of us, and it just basically gives us a reflection of our society for that time that movie comes out. It's like looking into the mirror and seeing ourselves. So, you know, I think in the live action movie is gonna kind of it's gonna have to show us, you know, things that, you know, we don't realize unless it's in a story format and it's kind of like written out for us, right? Like that's how Hollywood works, you know. Like you look
I
at
think.
yes,
I'm
Liza, go
sorry,
ahead.
Matt, but I think that what you're talking about would work if you had a reboot of the series.
Well, it is a reboot. The live action movie is
No,
going to be a reboot.
no. I'm talking about like a new 85 to 100 episode series. Because the way you're okay, here's my parallel. The Klingons in Star Trek. In the original TOS version, there was no mention of culture for the Klingons. But there were a lot of fanboys and fangirls out there who dressed up like Klingons because Klingons were badass and they were running around, you know, in cloaked ships blowing up people. When you got to the movies of Star
I would argue that the original series Klingons are clearly derivative of, you know, the Soviet Union.
Oh, granted, yes.
With this influence of kind of Asian. They're the kind of Mongolian Soviets.
Yes, and I agree with you on that. However, they never expanded on their culture, not until DS9.
Right.
It wasn't until DS9 that we actually got some semblance of what the Klingons were all about, with honor and duty and all that stuff that they believe in. And that was when they went into their deep dive.
You forgot the prune juice.
Yeah, and the prune juice. Thank you. However, that was done in a series. If we were to reboot an 85 to 100 episode series, talk about culture, go into all of this deep dive that you're talking about. If we're just talking about a 90 to 120 minute to 150 minute movie,
right,
there's no way in hell that we're going to be able to get into all this stuff. Just keep to the source material of what it is. Keep it to what we know and love. And quite honestly, I know when I was 13 years old watching this thing, I didn't care about culture or anything else. I was happy that I saw a whole bunch of transforming robots and people blowing up and like, oh my God, people died. And oh snap, Roy died. No! And then next episode, Ben died. No! I want my, wait a minute, is Rick going to go for Lisa or is Rick going to go for Min? I just want, keep it simple, stupid. KISS, as my son's teacher said. KISS, keep it simple, stupid. If you want to,
Lancer, I got a question for you, and for everyone here. If they're going to keep it simple, they're just pretty much going to have to make it an adventure movie.
Yeah.
Like something like the original Star Wars. Like keep it very simple.
Or like Lord of the Rings.
Or Lord of the Rings. Yeah.
Honestly, and you know what? I honestly would not mind that at all. If it was one movie, and we knew that there may or may not be a sequel, make it the best damn adventure movie in the history of the planet.
Sure, but if we are just making kind of a version of Transformers that is influenced by season 1 of Robotech, you know, are you going to keep the defeat of the Zentradi Armada because of J-pop? It's a real question, right? Because
you know what, it is a valid question, and you know what? Then you might as well not call it Robotech and call it Pacific Rim or something else.
Right. Well, it did happen in history. It did happen that music was able to conquer a war machine. And
Well,
that
sure,
was
but I gotta say, like, I didn't like the most recent Star Trek movie was what was it? I'm trying to remember, but they
Beyond.
basically
Beyond?
played sabotage.
Star Trek Beyond. Yeah.
Star Trek Beyond, which was the end of the Star Trek reboot franchise. Like that movie ended it, and they had this. Oh, we played Sabotage by the Beastie Boys, and it overwhelmed their armada.
Anyway, I was gonna go back to
Um,
saying that in reality, there's a documentary called The Singing Revolution, which is about Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, and how they broke off away from Soviet Russia during I would say the late '80s, early '90s, and they were able to win their independence just by singing. They have like a singing festival that they weren't allowed to host, so they had 1 million people, and Estonia is a very small country. It's like less than 1 million people. They were able to all go, and in defiance of the Soviet Union, they had their tanks on the streets and everything, ready to crush these people. And all they did was sing their songs, and they kept doing it. And the Russians couldn't do anything. The soldiers didn't feel compelled to kill these people.
Well, and
And
again, we're coming back to a cultural thing, which is what I'm saying. If this is about the culture and the loss of culture, then you could see using Lin Minmei's song as being like, well, that that was kind of the seminal moment where the Zentradi lost their crap. But if we're going with a straight up adventure movie, then that's dumb.
Right. If it was just one movie, then I would agree with that. However, if we were going to make it as a trilogy, as I believe all of us would need to see or want to see, or at least the Macross saga, then that MacGuffin of Minmei's song at the end in the third movie, needs to be built up. It needs to be earned.
It could be done. They'd have to change characters around and introduce like some sort of amalgamation of Rico, Conda, and Braun, like right at the very beginning, to play up that. Oh my God, what am I looking at?
That is you guys wanted to talk about Max and whatever, so that is a page from White Lily issue 4, where the number 1 and number 2 pilot of all time just finally get down right before the Battle of Kursk. So anyway,
Cool.
Yeah,
nice artistry. Very
nice
nice.
thinking.
thank you. Yeah, that's actually not inked. That is the raw pencil. It hasn't gone to ink yet.
Oh, my computer monitor needs an upgrade, I guess.
That's
No,
very-
it's this penciler is digital, so the digital pencils come through very much like ink.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so anyway. But you guys have mentioned that, so I've just been futzing around trying to go, how do I share this stuff in this particular Zoom? But there you go, page 4, or so that is issue 4, page 25 of White Lily.
very nice.
I could actually see that kind of style of like the way you make White Lily as something like a future Robotech comic. It would look pretty cool.
Yeah,
It'd be
the
pretty cool if
realism.
they just picked one style and stuck with it.
Yeah. Is
Talk
it?
about- hold on. Before you go on, there's one thought that I was thinking about, and I was trying to see how to put this together, because I like how some of the issues when Tommy Yoon first came in with the first comics that came out in 2002. Was it 2002?
Reach for the Stars, I think.
No. By what do you call it? That publishing company before it went to DC. You used to work
Wildstorm?
there before.
Wildstorm. Yeah.
Wildstorm. They had an interesting idea or development of, and I hated that they went too fast, was the global war. This takes us back into the conversation that we were talking about Micronians versus Zentradi. But at the same time, Robotech was coming out, or the beginning episode of Macross, they were barely coming out of a global war, and there were still elements in that that affected a lot of the characters, including Lin Kyle, or Kyle. What's his name?
Reber.
Carl
Carl
Reber.
Reber.
No, the one who anti-war guy.
Lin Kyle.
Lin Kyle.
Lin Kyle. It affected Lin Kyle. That affects Minmei. Kind of everybody hates him because he was always anti-war. But
Everybody hated him because
Well,
he's a
I would
dick.
like to see that in the live action movie. You know, something that came a lot of the what do you call it global war elements going into the new Robotech. I mean, in a way, kind of affected, you know, just a bit.
Those were interesting comics. I liked the pre-Macross, the prequel comics they did for the Macross saga concerning the global war. That was a lot of fun. They even
And
went
didn't
as
dive
far
a
as
lot.
having Leonard running a false flag operation for the AUL. Was pretty interesting.
Yeah, the Anti-Unification League.
Yeah.
I'm going to pitch a Robotech movie idea, and you guys tell me how it sounds. You ready?
Go for it.
All right. We make the main characters the Zentradi, and we follow Britai and Dolza and, you know, Chiron, and, you know, we follow the Zentradi crew as they are like, okay, we have to go to Earth and we have to, you know, do this, and we kind of follow the degeneration of their, you know, militaristic, very minimalist culture as they're coming into you know, contact with the Micronians. So we basically tell Robotech from the other side as a 90-minute movie.
What was that movie that did that?
Would you do it documentary style?
Yeah, me and Mav are smiling because you're not far off through what me and Mav have been thinking, but it has to do the other Zentradi side, but
Right.
a little before they come to Earth, because there's a lot of story pre-Zentradi Earth going on, especially with Zor and the coming about of getting control of the flower of life from the region. We see that in the Horizon comic. We see it on the Horizon comic where the Regis is still pissed off about it, you know. And I'm saying there's a lot of story in there, you know, where he, how do you say it? Zor kind of, did he have a mess around with somebody's wife, which was the Regis, and what the region, you know?
Yeah, he
that,
messed
you know?
Zor messed around with the regent's wife, the Regis, and when the regent found out about that, he kind of flipped, and that's why the Regis wants when she wanted to create her next generation of Invid followers, she wanted to basically humanize them in the image of her lover Zor.
Zor. And the region wants to destroy everything that has to do with humans.
Yes, because he did it as
Okay.
a revenge for basically breaking apart their relationship.
Now, see, there's story right there. That's where I want to dive in, and me and Mav are playing with something around that. But I see where you're going with what do you call it, the Zentradi side, kind of like the Cobra Kai feel of it, where what do you call it? You're seeing the side of Johnny
the enemy.
Lawrence.
Yeah.
There was a movie that was out, a war movie recently. Wasn't too long ago. It was the one with Clint Eastwood, and it's about the battle on what was those islands, the Japanese islands that they were
It was
fighting.
like letters from our fathers or something. I like that.
Letters from Iwo Jima.
Yeah, letters from Iwo Jima.
Yeah, and there was two movies made. One was, it's the same movie. It was made by the same
Or
producers.
Flags of Our Fathers. Right?
Yeah. Flags of Our Fathers, and one was on the two movies were made. They were made back to back, and one was made from the perspective of the Americans invading the island and what they had to deal with, and then the one from the perspective of the Japanese. And when they did the Japanese version, I believe they had the original cast basically acted out in Japanese and then have it subtitled, so you get the perspective of both, and in their original, you know, you basically sympathize with both sides of the war who fought that battle. It was a really interesting movie. I have to know what the name of the other one was. The other movie that was made, that was basically made coinciding with the Iwo Jima Flags of Our Father. Because that movie is your movie, Preston. That's the one, but not the Flags of Our Father, but on the other side, I guess the antagonist side and their perspective.
And in my opinion, that's, you know, if we're going with like a 90-minute movie, that's what it's got to be. It's got to be where we're exploring maybe two sides of this one conflict of the alien culture coming into contact with Earth. That's it. I don't want any like funky, weird timeline stuff. We don't need to worry about what color or gender anybody is. Just, I don't even know what color Britai is. I mean, in the original series, he was blue, and now he's kind of gray. And I feel like blue people should be really pissed off about this, personally. But
Britai's black. I don't care what anyone says. Britai's black.
Fair enough.
And he's going to be played by The Rock.
No, he's gonna be played by Robert Downey Jr. He can do
Hey, he's available now.
it. Tropic Thunder, you know.
Yeah.
But guess okay. You know who else is available? Is okay. We won't talk about this video.
The after Endgame, there's a lot of people available.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Lancer. I know we were talking about the Lancer. They're stuck with the MCU. I wish this person was this actor but they're stuck in the MCU.
Yeah.
What do you think now?
Yeah, but we can't talk about spoilers until tomorrow. They've already said that tomorrow is the last day that we can have no spoilers, and then after that we can spoil away.
Okay.
So I will not spoil that Wonder Woman got killed. Okay, I will not say, "Oh, damn it," and I will not spoil that Aquaman was destroyed. I mean, damn it.
And now that we mentioned those movies, look, going back to the whole gender bendy identity politics concept of movies, do you know the gender breakdown of Captain Marvel's cinematic audience?
Honestly, I do not know that. I can look that up.
Oh, yeah, I know you could look at. All right, does anyone which to speculate, was it primarily men or primarily women who went to see Aquaman? Or no,
I'm gonna guess primarily men.
Yeah, I would say a lot of guys.
Yeah, it was primarily men who went to see Captain Marvel. And Aquaman, was it primarily men or primarily women who went to see Aquaman?
I would think that's 50-50 because my sister went apeshit when she knew that
it was primarily women. I think
it was primarily women for Aquaman.
My wife says that's the one DC movie she would go and watch because it's what's his
Jason
name?
Momoa.
Jason Momoa. That's right.
I pitched him in our casting session. I told you guys.
Right. So whenever we're talking about, we need to make this character a woman to get women. No, that the women don't want to. They largely don't want to see other women. They want to see hot dudes. That's just kind of what they want to see. Hot dudes doing hot dude things and
wearing fish scales.
Okay.
Or whatever.
Okay. Here's the thing. Do you want to see an older cast or a younger cast for the movie?
I just good cast.
A good cast.
Yeah. Well, why don't we continue our pitches? We got Lancer.
Rick Hunter's young, Min May's young. I mean, some of those characters have to be young, right?
Because you're trying to replace the current fandom because the Robotech fandom is indeed an aging fandom, and I think when you look at some of the attempts of other IP properties and how they try to reboot their their brand is basically by attracting the younger fans with like a younger cast. So you have very attractive people and pretty and youthful people and very funny people. And and I look at Ron Moore's Battlestar Galactica as a good example where they had a very young cast in playing some of the critical roles. Like Boomer was a young actress, and so was Starbuck, and even Apollo was very young. And sometimes you need that kind of youth to reinvigorate an IP property in order to attract the younger people and introduce them into the history, the property, and the stories behind it. So, like, do you want a younger cast, or do you want a cast that's like older and more serious and more established? So that way, Sean Connery as Captain Global, that'll sell. Well,
sure, but I mean, at the same time, some characters have to be young. Rick Hunter, Lin May, they have to be young. Max Sterling kind of has to be a fairly young guy, but like some of the other characters, like Roy Fokker could be in his 30s. I could certainly see that. There's no reason Global shouldn't be an old guy. Britai could be young, he could be old, but I think the Zentradi, kind of these grizzled veterans, should be kind of towards the older range. And at which point you now have a fairly diverse in terms of age group of people.
Yeah.
I think that would actually be kind of interesting if like Max and Ben were older than Rick. They're trapped out there on the edge of the solar system, and they just start recruiting people from Gen Pop. And the two guys that he gets assigned happen to be just older, that they weren't pilots before, and they went through, basic and got hired on, and they just get stuck under this butter bar.
Or you make them they are veteran pilots, but they're not as good pilots in a Veritech, and all of a sudden they're stuck with some wet behind the ears kid named Rick Hunter as their subordinate, and Rick basically has to earn their trust and their respect in a Veritech. That could work too if you were going that route.
Like Starship Troopers with Rico. In Starship Troopers, in the Starship Troopers movie, where he was like a, what do you call it? Like, he was very green, and what's the guy, the sergeant guy that captured the brain?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, Zim.
Yeah, Rico took over his what do you call it, his rank.
Yeah,
something like that.
If they went that route, I would not be too upset. But at the same time, you have to. You can't just do it just to do it.
I mean, I certainly want to know more.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any other things you want to say, or do you want to close up shop now and end the podcast?
Memo and Matt, did y'all want to do movie pitches?
I think we could save that one for later, because that's going to take forever to talk about.
Yeah.
I think that's about it. And thanks for everybody joining us. There's I don't even know how long we lasted.
I wanna thank Preston as a guest on our show. And Preston has a website called PocketJacksComics.com, and if you go to his website, you can find out more about some of the comics that he has lined up. Particularly one of them was White Lily
issue. Yeah, White Lily issue 3 goes live on Kickstarter on Thursday. So if you follow me on
diving.
I'm sorry, what?
And you're also diving into comic book reviews. I saw your post on Robotech X, and I'm like, wait a minute. There's another guy doing comic book reviews. It's good to find out that there's more people out there doing that. So that's how I was able to, when you posted on Robotech X, it finally flagged me, and I'm like, okay, let's see if we could get him on board. And what do you call it? You have how many comics reviewing? 1 or 2? Because I only found 2, 18 and 19.
Yeah, I'm about to post a review of 20, and also Lisa. What is this one? I got Lisa's report, I think it's called. Okay.
Instead of Gloval's report.
Yeah. Oh, wait. Which I guess this, as far as I can tell, this is just a compilation of comics like 16 through 20. But
you haven't got the other ones, the 1 through 18 yet?
No, I don't have that one.
Okay.
So anyway, I'm gonna post
you at 18.
I'm gonna post a review of Robotech issue 20 here in the next day or two.
All right, and what's the name of your channel on YouTube?
Can't wait for that one.
Mine on YouTube is Pocket Jacks Comics. You can find me at youtube.com/PocketJacksComics.
Okay. And if anyone else is okay with it, I'll end the show right now. And
yeah, I'm already following you. So I'm
okay.
For,
yeah, I got to work tomorrow. But Preston, thank you for being part of our show.
Yeah, no problem. Take care.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks everyone for showing up, and everyone, if you can get a hold of this, get the hold of the free comic book day issue of Event Horizon, and hopefully for the next show we'll have some interesting stuff regarding because I think we have the convention season starting in June. Anything interesting?
I'm going to a lot of conventions now. So,
okay.
Ontario is coming up in 2 weeks.
Which one?
Ontario Comic Con. That's coming up in 2 weeks. Then I'm going to.
All right. And for Robotech related, we have ProtocultureCon in June 9th, which is a Sunday. And after that is Anime Expo, where Harmony Gold will be there, and then San Diego Comic Con soon after in
Yes,
July.
come out to the Toy Robo. Come see
Robo Toy
us.
Fest. Robo Toy Fest.
Toy
Yeah.
Fest. Come see us at Horticulture Con. Memo, myself will be there. You can meet us. Memo gives out autographs.
And not only that, we're all waiting on the news. The only thing that I have for Robotech news is Andy Muschietti, Barbara Muschietti, and
Yes.
Andy Muschietti, who is the director, Barbara Muschietti, who's a producer and also helps out with Andy Muschietti, the brother and sister, and Jason Fuchs are out here in LA. Well, I don't live in LA no more, but they're out in LA, and they're hanging around too long over there. You know what I mean? The Muschettis haven't. They're not going to be waiting for the trailer to come out if they're over there. So I think they're probably knocking some things going on with the Robotech live action.
For those people
guys.
that are watching, Jason Fuchs is the writer right now that's attached to the Robotech film adaptation, and the post basically has them all together. And I think I geolocated it to Culver City, California.
Mhm.
So that's
Yeah,
pretty close
which is
to
right there. It's LA. It's LA.
yeah, that's pretty close to Sony Pictures. So there's something going on right now, and I Memo, come on, what do you have? Come on,
I can't
you might
say
as well end
nothing,
that show
man.
on a high note. What do you have?
I don't have nothing other than I could only say what's out there.
Okay.
You know, and go from there. I could only talk about what they do or what they say, because anything else would be too much inside sourcing, and I don't want to do that. So, but what do you call it? They haven't said anything about Robotech. It's just that they're still lingering around that general area where Sony is and Harmony Gold is at, you know, which is right up there in the Hollywood Hills. So the Muschettis haven't left LA. They're still out there, and the writers out there. So they're mixing something up. And so far, hopefully more news comes out before ProtocultureCon, or because Tommy usually shows up at ProtocultureCon, and either that or Anime Expo, or going into San Diego Comic Con. But things have to break pretty soon, because if they're going through, if I would think they will probably be going through story structure right now.
Any chance of getting a cast member or two to be attached to the movies this summer?
It has to happen. Like Lancer said, they have to come out with a bang with the first actor or actress, and I'm thinking the Rick Hunter or the Min May, you know, or both. You know, sometimes a casting comes out with one or two or three persons, and it just, people start going crazy from there, you know. And then everybody starts speculating. There's going to be videos probably of everybody talking about the live action movie Robotech, but you know,
Well, we will be the first.
we will be the first to be jumping on that podcast live and whatnot, like we are doing now. But yeah, those three guys are still in LA, and where they're running around, I don't know. So they haven't posted nothing. So till somebody says something. So that's going to be probably Sony. That's all I have for you guys.
Okay, so that I think we're gonna end on that note. So for everyone here on from Robotech World, I'm Maverick LSC. I want to thank you, Memo, and Trez, and Preston, and Lancer for showing up. And I don't know what to say. You know, this is the comics, the comics, the comics. It was interesting to see the changes in this one here for the Event Horizon. I think I want to end is there's going to be some interesting stuff coming up. I think the next issue is issue 21, which will continue on the Event Horizon storyline. So I suggest everyone who's been following us to follow us, you know, to go ahead and get the comic and see some additional spoilers. and follow us on that. And from all of us here on Robotech World, Maverick LSC, Memo, Lancer, Trez, and Preston, come back and give us a like if you like what you see, and please subscribe. And we'll see you next time on Robotech World. Maverick LSC out.